Warning. The following video discusses rape, sexual assault, racism, sexism, and homophobia. If you do not wish to proceed forward, please click off now. So I have a great deal of respect for Wentworth Miller since he said that he was never going to play a straight character ever again. It'd probably be what I do if I was an actor. I haven't gone back and watched everything he's done or made it my mission to watch everything he's going to be in after he made the statement. I was only familiar with his career because I'm a major Legends of Tomorrow stan. How to get Wentworth Miller back. Let his headcanon for Snart being pansexual be real. But some people I follow on Tumblr do follow celebrities from project to project and are fans of his. So whatever he's up to now will come across my dash from time to time, which led to me seeing this post, and for some reason I had the urge to watch SVU. Or at least the episodes that Wentworth was in. Look, I will take any character saying they're gay outside of a coming out story. Here's what I knew about SVU before watching the 2 episodes. It's a spin-off of Law & Order, it's still on the air, Chilton from Hannibal is in it, and everyone ships him with one of the other guys. Now I know that guy's name is Carisi. As I was watching the episodes, I couldn't help but think about how a long-running show like that had changed, what differences you would see between the first and latest episodes. It's a thought I've had about long-running series. What happens when you don't know much and only watch the pilot and the finale? Or in this case, the latest episode. How do they compare? I'm going to take a few topics that the episodes share in common and discuss the good, the bad, and what has changed with the times. The specific episodes I'll be looking at are the first episode, Payback, and Season 22, Episode 6, The Long Arm of the Witness. This is the most recent episode at the time of me writing this. The cold open for each episode could not be more different, which is to be expected. One is the opening to a brand new show, and the other is for an episode 22 seasons in. Payback's opening is less than a minute long and sets up the case rather quickly. A taxi driver has been stabbed and the SVU gets to take it because the guy's dick was cut off. I will say you are automatically going to grab or lose your audience with that opening. It's quick, and then suddenly we're at the intro. Long Arm of the Witness is a lot longer, clocking in at almost 5 minutes. Aside from reminding me that COVID is a thing, seriously, why have the only 2 2021 series I've watched taken place in the real world? The episode opens on a trial for a case that has already been brought forward. A girl was raped by a rich white guy while she was drunk, and the judge, Gallagher, ends up ruling in the guy's favor because he doesn't want to ruin his future. There's a bit of build-up to that, though, with the testimony from the witness and Benson, the station captain, and a recess. We also cut back to the precinct as we see the other members of the SVU discussing the case, which, if I'm being honest, doesn't really add much and feels like padding. After the judge makes his ruling, the defense lawyer, Rita Calhoun, tells Benson and Carisi, the assistant district attorney, that Gallagher was using the case to help launch his political career. Then the cold open ends. Both cold opens get done what they need to get done. Payback is meant to not just grab the audience for an episode, but the whole series. So getting to the focus and point quick is going to be beneficial. That's not to say that a longer intro could break a series. Any Star Trek series in Good Omens are proof of that. I just think that SVU was trying to grab people as soon as possible, and just having that short intro could grab an audience. If not in a I'm interested in the premise way, then at least in a shocked way. Witness's opening can be longer. Aside from the fact that most TV shows now will have longer cold opens, it's also 22 seasons into the series. Most people are already familiar with how the show works, and the writers let the build-up to the premise of the episode breathe. It's also a situation that needs that build-up. You don't need a lot of preamble to a guy getting his dick chopped off, but there is a need for more in the case for this episode. Payback establishes what the case is, while Witness explains why they're putting a case together. Payback's case starts out fairly simple, figuring out who murdered the taxi driver. But it became more complicated when the driver had a fake license that he bought off someone else. So it seems like someone was actually trying to kill the original owner of the license. Then they discover the real name of the victim, who turns out to be a war criminal who tortured and raped 67 women. Thus making Benson, only a detective at this point, feel more complicated on what to do about the murder. My opinion is that he deserved to get 37 stab wounds. Wish they stabbed him 9 times less, though.
28 stab wounds.
Witness is a little more complicated. After Gallagher announces that he is running for Attorney General, the SVU doesn't think that he would be a good candidate due to him being a victim-blaming asshole and rapist apologist. My words, not theirs. They believe he may be taking bribes from the uncle of the guy from the cold open trial and try and find a way to create a case. They then find out that Galler actually raped several girls during his time in college, as well as during his time as a professor. They then set out to find those women and build a case to get him to stop running for Attorney General. The rest of the episode is the trial itself. Both of these are storylines that are reflective of what's going on at the time. Witness is specifically in response to the Me Too movement, showing the kind of guys that benefit when women stay silent about their abusers. The kind of guys who manipulate the system and have friends in high places so they won't get caught. Something that wasn't as prevalent in 1999. That's where the focus of a lot of sexual assault cases are. People coming forward sometimes after years and saying what happened to them, either because they weren't taken seriously before or because they had never spoken up, versus the reaction in 1999. Excuse me while I Google things and become an expert on whatever happened in 1999. So apparently there was a NATO bombing in Yugoslavia during the Kosovo War, a war between Yugoslavia and a Kosovo Albanian rebel group which started to fight against Serbian persecution of Kosovo Albanians. NATO got involved as a humanitarian effort which led to the KLA bombing them, and after the war was over found that Yugoslavia systematically created a campaign of terror against Kosovo Albanians. The fact that I found all of that out because of an SVU episode and had never heard of it in any of my history classes, kinda concerning. I know this is technically a more recent history, but still. This was big and relevant enough that Americans knew about it during the time and made it into a pilot of a TV series, and I'm only now learning about it because of said TV series? I think it's time to move on before I start complaining about the American education system and how it failed me. This is why I get most of my world history from overly sarcastic productions. Blue cover whatever the heck was going on then. Both episodes are still set in New York, something that hasn't changed, but the precinct is distinctly different. Payback looks more like an actual police station, or at least the set of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Long arm of the witness, the precinct is very much not looking like your average New York precinct. Looks more like the FBI offices in Hannibal, but somehow even more polished. Payback spends a lot of time in the New York streets while Witness doesn't do as much. One of the reasons for that is that they need to use the set more in Witness due to COVID filming restrictions. Payback spends a lot more time in the streets, it's where a lot of the conversations happen. Witness spends most of its time at the precinct or the courthouse. Payback only shows the courthouse for one scene. A scene that I question why it was there in the first place. Seriously, Dick Wolf, why was that added in? So given the premise of this show, you should have all expected this topic. The way Payback and Witness differentiate and how they treat sexual assault and victims of sexual assault is rather different. In Payback, they're looking for someone who murdered a rapist and assume that it's one of the victims. Which, yeah, they're right, but they didn't need to say it. While Benson treats the victims as victims who have gone through something traumatic, the men at the station don't. They are assholes. Munch literally calls one of the women crazy when they arrest her. They're just so gung-ho about arresting a murderer and don't even care about the reasons behind the motivation. I also want to point out if they hadn't arrested either of the women, nothing would have changed. They wouldn't have ever murdered another person. You think they're just going to go out and become serial killers? No! They murdered the guy who raped and tortured them. And yeah, maybe he wouldn't have done any of those awful things ever again, but the woman wouldn't have ever killed anyone again. This is why our system of punishment is extremely flawed and doesn't actually help people. So anyways, Witness could not be more different in the way it treats sexual assault victims. They're given sympathy and actually treated like people, and unlike Payback's murderers, the guy would actually continue to hurt and rape women if he didn't get put away. He had already shown a repeated pattern of raping and abusing women. The episode also shows the way being around their rapist can affect someone's mental state, and not just murdering their abuser. Although if this dude got murdered, I would not be against it. It's more realistic to how victims can feel. They can end up being completely okay and stable, but the second you place their abuser in front of them, they fall apart. They also don't treat them badly. The only people that do are the rapists and Calhoun when she's defending Gallagher. This isn't just the main victims either, they're treated the same in the cold opening too. trying to find ways to help victims even after their trials are over. Payback also has a really unfortunate ending of just letting Marta get put away and us never seeing her again. You do feel bad for her, but the fact that they're opening their show with a rape victim as the perpetrator can leave a bad taste in my mouth. Has the same energy as when the magicians made Julia the bad guy. So neither of these episodes deal heavily with race, but there's still some ways that race is addressed or not addressed. Payback has literally nothing but white characters in it, and not just as main characters. There's literally one person of color in the whole episode, and it's Michelle Hurd as Detective Monique Jeffries. Oh, and I had to look up that she was a detective because for the entire episode I thought she was their secretary. Granted, what little screen time she gets is spent roasting Munch, so I do already like her. But the fact that I thought she was the secretary for most of the episode, and the fact that there's no other people of color in the episode, doesn't really have this episode gain any points in my opinion. Witness, well, first of all, has 3 main characters who are people of color, so it's already winning, even if the focus of the episode are white people Benson and Carisi. Mostly Carisi. But that's not the point. They do bring up how Gallagher will go after women who are on scholarship, typically those who are non-white. Half the women they do find are women of color. It's also brought up how Gallagher is willing to prosecute men of color in rape cases but not white men. This is also the only show I've seen that acknowledges that Wentworth Miller is mixed race. I find it weird that both of these episodes have queer themes in them, while also still not having any main queer characters at the time. Yes, I know about all your Carisi headcanons, but that's not canon! Being queer is not the focus of either episode, but queer characters and themes are there. In Payback, it's revealed that the guy the victim bought the license of was a male prostitute, and at first it's believed that someone was trying to kill him instead. The comments they make about him, as well as the performance, is rather uncomfortable. They call him things like a disco queen and a she, and I think Staper also threatens to beat him at one point.
What hurt you?
Yeah, and they also have to interview Spicer's past clients, and when Cassidy asks which one he should take, Cragen says,
Enjoy yourself.
I think they literally just let Cassidy pick so that he can go have fun harassing gay men. Which includes a scene of police brutality. It's a good thing there's no bad history between the LGBT community and the police. That could make this feel even more uncomfortable. They also include this artist guy, and I think they're supposed to be framing him as strange and weird, but this is the most normal person in the whole episode to me.
My wife's bisexual, but she prefers women.
Wow, that's one of the few times I've ever heard the word bisexual in any piece of media ever, instead of just doing the straight implication that making out with a man and a woman equals bi. Witness is a breath of fresh air after this. Like, oh thank God, a gay character that isn't used as a joke or isn't automatically bad just for being gay. Which at this point is the lowest bar possible for LGBT rep, aside from not having them die for shock value. Isaiah Holmes was introduced in a previous episode as a friend of Carisi's, which is an episode that has more prominent LGBT themes, but that's not the point. Isaiah isn't the bad guy, he's a fellow ADA like Carisi. In fact, he's the reason that the case is being brought forward, and ends up being the reason that they win. While a gay character is still shown homophobia and had previously been harassed for being gay, the homophobia and harassment is coming from someone who isn't one of the protagonists. Instead, it's the person that they're trying to put away. While I acknowledge that Payback was made in a different time than Witness, that doesn't mean that I'm going to let it off without a pass. It's just not how media criticism works. The same thing goes for racism and sexism in other media. You acknowledge that it was a different time and use that to help the point you're trying to make. It doesn't excuse any issues. Payback and Witness are showing versions of both homophobia and queerness. Both will acknowledge that being queer is an other, but Payback states that it's a bad or abnormal other. While Witness agrees that it's an other, it's not bad. It's just something that is different that gets called bad by bad people. In Payback, the homophobes are the cops, the good guys. In Witness, they're the guys on trial. The show has clearly changed over time and starts to reflect the era that each episode takes place in. It still has good writing, but is also now conscious of who their audience might be. It's not going to be a bunch of straight white guys featuring the occasional woman. There's now different stories being told from a different perspective. It's also not mostly about the cops. The way the show is structured, they're also showing what else goes into a case, which includes the trial and people getting convicted. You can't just get a confession and they're in jail, there's more to it than that. The end of the case isn't with handcuffs, it's with a gavel on the stand. But I have gone through the wiki during this time and do see that there are still less than great episodes, as well as uncomfortable ones. Not every episode is like this, and if I go look into it more, I'd probably find episodes that contradict the changes that I'd seen later on in the show. The show isn't going to progress in a linear way, it takes time, and there's going to be mistakes along that way. I want to see that progression, though. Maybe I'll cover that someday. With a different show. I don't have time for almost 500 episodes of TV anymore. What am I, a Naruto stan? Also, I laugh every time Dick Wolf appears on screen. I'm a child. Thank you all for watching. All of this has been Rab's opinion. Leave your own in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.